Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Last time we discussed the concept of zakat in Islam. And we mentioned how all these pillars of Islam, fundamental pillars of Islam, purifying the individual's soul and life, and the society as well. Today, inshallah, we will move to another fundamental pillar of Islam, that is fasting Ramadan. Fasting is one of the 5 fundamental pillars in Islam, but it is a universal institution because all other religions in the world adopted fasting in some forms as the principal method of controlling and killing passions. As a matter of fact, some philosophers as well adopted certain forms of fasting. Babylonians, Romans, and many other societies knew very well and practiced certain forms of fasting. But fasting in Islam is one of the fundamental pillars of Islam. Fasting helps in gaining perfection in all activities of our worldly life. The injunction about fasting was revealed in the second Hijrah of Islam, in the second year of Hijrah. We all know that according to Muslims, they use the Hijri calendar, which starts with the first day of the month Muharram. So when Muslims migrated from Mecca to Medina, that was the beginning of the Islamic calendar, the first year of Hijrah. So fasting, as a matter of fact, was revealed in the second year of Hijrah in Al-Madinah. Like prayer, the institution of fasting is kept alive as it is observed every year in the Islamic world and forms the regulating principles of Muslims' lives. Fasting previously resorted to as a sign of grief, of mourning, of a great event. But the underlying idea was different. Islam, for example, introduced a highly developed significance that the Quran, the Holy Quran, says in this regard: the object is that you may guard against evil. The second chapter, Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 183. So the main objective of fasting is to generate power in human body and mind, which can control unruly passion, just as a beast is brought under control by keeping it occasionally hungry and then by giving it food. Fasting is methodical in Islam, as in every month of Ramadan, the young and the old, the rich and the poor, the literate and the illiterate, men and women, all have to fast with the same spirit of common guidance of Allah and universal brotherhood of a human being. While in other religions or philosophies, it is not so. Islam is, in that case, reserving and protecting the institution of fasting in the month of Ramadan. Many verses in the Quran and many sayings of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, mentioned the significance of this fundamental pillar in Islam. One of these sayings and ahadith of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, mentioned that in this month of Ramadan, the doors of mercy, forgiveness and kindness are especially opened and the doors of punishment are closed. Therefore, whosoever wishes to have these blessings will at once take up to fasting at the advent of this month. It's stated in Hadith Qudsi, that Allah is saying, it's for me and I shall certainly compensate it. It's a relation between the Creator and the individual himself. Islam, as a matter of fact, saved the institution of fasting by making it obligatory. This seasonal fasting is very natural, as the world also undergoes such a fasting in particular season of the year. From May to August, most part of the world is dried up by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He gives it food after that period. Thus, the drying up of the body is also required for some particular time of the year. For these reasons, we can say that fasting provides perfection in many of our real life activities. When we talk about the significance of fasting, we can say that fasting, as a matter of fact, helping people in acquiring patience and strong will. There are many traditions related to the virtues and merits that a man can achieve from Allah by fasting during the month of Ramadan. But one of the most well-known sayings of a Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, that he said, whosoever fasts in Ramadan out of faith and hopeful of reward, all his past sins will be forgiven. Those stand up in a prayer in Ramadan out of faith and hopeful of reward, all their past sins will be forgiven. So there is a special gate of paradise, according to sayings of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, which is known as Ar-Rayyan. It's only for those who observe fasting, and they will be allowed to enter through this gate on the day of judgment or the day of resurrections. Because of all these sayings and many of other sayings of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, Muslims look at this school, if we may say, or academy of fasting with high spirit, and looking forward from one year to another to do their best during the month of Ramadan. It's not about fasting only. It's not about people leaving their diet and their drinking or their certain habits of eating and drinking and changing the timing. It's not about this only. Fasting, as a matter of fact, is to avoid all dirty and undesirable things. In other sayings and traditions, it's stated that Allah has no need for him to be hungry for those who are not leaving and avoiding their undesirable things and manners. Allah has no need for these people to be hungry and thirsty, and do not refrain from evil doing. Fasting helping people to gain taqwa, fairness and love of Allah. Allah, as a matter of fact, stated in the Quran in the second chapter, Surah Al-Baqarah, in the verse 183, what is the main goal and aim of fasting? Allah mentioned that He is the one who legislated fasting for gaining taqwa through siyam and fasting. Allah saying in Surah Al-Baqarah, O you who believe, fasting has been prescribed upon you as it has been prescribed upon those before you, so that you may attain taqwa. So it's all about taqwa. Taqwa in this case means to make a shield between oneself and Allah's anger and hellfire. So Muslims supposed to ask themselves when they fast and when they break out their fasts, has this fasting day made us fear and love Allah more? Has it resulted that we want to protect ourselves from the hellfire or not? Fasting helps in drawing closer to Allah. This is achieved by not only fasting, but reciting Quran during night and day, attending Taraweeh prayer, remembering Allah, sitting in circles of knowledge and learning, helping others. Some Muslims making Umrah and going to Mecca. Some people, they leave all worldly pursuits and schedule their programs and their days and nights in a masjid or in a mosque, thinking, contemplating of Allah and Quran in their life. Fasting, as a matter of fact, helps people in striving for ihsan, being sincere, staying away from any kind of showing off. As ihsan as a concept in the Quran means to worship Allah as if one sees Him, and even though one does not see Him, He sees all. Fasting helps in, of course, upgrading our good manners, especially those related to truthfulness, being sincere in your ibadah and in your worship, thinking about others as well. Fasting helps to be more generous, more helpful towards other people, helps in sensing the unity of the Muslim Ummah. Fasting brings passion under control. Passion is the root of all evils, and this can be regulated by the method of fasting. Feeling for others makes the soul shining again, refreshes the soul and the spirit, and cheers up from its state. Excessive eating, for example, makes sometimes, in many cases, makes it blind and dark. Just like as excessive water destroys crops, excessive eating and involvement and engagement in worldly life, taking us away from our spiritual needs and habits. Fasting makes the soul again refreshing and feeling closer to Almighty Allah. Fasting teaches sympathy for the hungry. It's the only thing which gives a sense of pangs of hungry man in the mind of the rich. Fasting teaches moral discipline, a training ground for the lesson that man, whatever is his rank or position, is prepared to suffer the greatest privation and the hardest trial. This lesson is learned from day to day. Fasting removes false sense of a prestige and pride, because man finds himself weak and naturally turns towards one who is strong. Hunger, as a matter of fact, makes a man modest and turns the mind towards the Almighty for help, making people feel that they have to feel for each other. Fasting saves times and trouble, as it reduces the period of sleep, and thus a great deal of time is saved for work. As we said, excessive eating keeps a man engaged very often in taking food, responding to the frequent calls of nature, while this time can be saved by fasting. It's changing all habits. Fasting greatly contributes to the preservation of health. Many doctors, many people advise and strongly recommend fasting, different forms of fasting for their patients. But something very important has to be mentioned here, that we should not mix up things. Fasting as a fundamental pillar of Islam is a religious and a spiritual activity. But fasting as a form of leading healthier life and style or lifestyle, it's a different story. Yes, it's quite common that many people today, including some physicians and doctors, as we said, and as you will watch in this documentary, advise people to try from time to time, from period to period, to have fasting for certain timing. But it doesn't mean at all that people, while they are fasting Ramadan, they keep thinking and focusing on these issues. Why? Because as we said, the niyyah, or the good intention, is very important and essential in Islamic teachings. So it means that your intention supposed to be directed and focused on following the commands of Allah, who is a prescribed fasting Ramadan for those who believe in. So yes, people, they know, Muslims, they know very well, especially these days after all these researches and studies, that fasting is very helpful in maintaining one's mental health, one's health in general, but still they look at it from religious and spiritual perspective. That's because fasting keeps faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala a living force. Fasting, man can easily satisfy himself by taking food or a drink in the inner recess of his house. There is no one to see him. But even though he feels that Allah is near to him and always seeing him, so he restrains himself. The existence of Allah during fasting is felt closer. This is not for a once or twice, but regularly for the whole month. In this way, faith in Allah is kept alive, and a new consciousness of a higher life is awakened. One of the most important aims and goals of fasting Ramadan in life of Muslims, that one actually supposed to realize the suffering of the poor and the needy. His heart opens up for charity and feeding the hungry. Once get to realize the great bounties of Allah in shielding him from want and hunger. Fasting person, as a matter of fact, develops a feeling of gratitude towards Allah. This feeling of gratitude motivates a person to value the blessings he has received and becomes more humble and generous. He develops feeling of compassion towards the suffering of poor people, and this training leads to a revolution within himself. This training is intended to develop avoidance of extravagance among Muslims. It's as we said, it is a school by itself. Muslims give up all evil deeds. Fasting means that Muslims refrain from all evil deeds so that it can make people and individuals a good people and individuals and citizens. If we can't give up all the evil deeds, then there is no point of fasting in that case. As many scholars and companions in the early days of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, mention, fasting is for the sake of Allah only. As we said, Muslims, when they fast Ramadan, they suppose to focus on their good intention in fasting Ramadan. Fasting is for Allah only. While dieting, for example, is for his or health purpose. Yes, Islam has clearly prescribed about good health and dieting. But still, when you are following what Allah is saying, it means that you're supposed to focus on your good intention within your heart. Because of what we said about fasting and aims and goals of fasting, fasting of Ramadan is a great opportunity for those who would like to purify their souls and their spirits. Within this spirit and this sense of unity among Muslims and brotherhood among Muslims, the Muslim society, especially during days of Ramadan, all members in this society and community feel closer to one another, feel the unity of the Muslim Ummah. So one of the essential goals of obtaining all these pillars of Islam is to have this spirit high and strong. One community, feeling one for another. Living certain habits in their daily life for the sake of Allah. Leaving these things and these habits for the sake of Allah, reminding them again and again with the concept of Tawheed. As we keep saying, concept of Tawheed supposed to be reflected in all aspects of worship, in all aspects and acts of life of Muslims. So the concept of Tawheed is clearly reflected in the act of worship and fasting Ramadan. I strongly recommend this short video for you about, as we said, benefits of fasting, bearing in mind that all these benefits are not supposed to interfere with the good intention of fasting Ramadan in life of Muslims. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.